Esther's a very shy, reserved, sensitive little girl going through an extremely difficult time.
We've all seen evil child movies. There's been The Omen, there's The Bad Seed, there's The Good Son.
Go to your room.
Honestly, we're past that now, aren't we?
This is by no means generic, run-of-the-mill, your everyday bad seed story.
Classic in a horror movie is ordinary on the surface and deeply, deeply wrong right underneath.
Do you want to play?
You know, this is the corruption of a child. There's something that's very visceral to that.
I think there could be something wrong with Esther.
What?
Taking that fear factor and ratcheting it up and turning it into a thriller.
She hasn't returned since yesterday, and I'm just starting to get really worried.
But this is a very unique version. It's not just an evil child movie. There's something much more insidious going on with this picture.
Hello, Daddy.
My jaw just dropped, and Joel's like, what is it, what is it, what is it? And I'm like, this is really screwed up, and we're either gonna make a great kind of classic horror movie, or we're all going to hell.
I'm not your fucking mommy!
Hey, I want to introduce you. This is my wife, Kate. Kate, this is Esther.
Hello. Why aren't you down at the party?
I've never really seen the point of it. Nobody's ever talked to me before. I guess I'm different.
I really saw the potential of making a really good movie, like, you know, the movies in the 70s, you know, great acting, great atmosphere, great tension.
Oh, it's, you know, it's a horror film. Esther.
Horror meaning horrifying events happening to real people with real problems.
Whether it was Vera Farmiga's character of Kate or Peter Sarsgaard's character of John, it was a couple that I think people can relate to because they're very flawed.
Esther works her way in and sees the cracks in their relationship and exploits it.
She says that you were hitting on her.
What? This was set apart because it had that realistic component. It had that psychological component.
I called her old school. Trouble does have a way of finding her.
Just don't understand this kind of thing. Who would do this?
They start seeing all these different things happen, and things are happening that they can't explain.
Esther may have pushed her down. I don't know. Well, you know, we just don't know that much about her.
She is not come from here.
Well, I haven't even told you her name yet.
Orphan is a psychological thriller.
The orphanage you thought she came from has never heard of her.
There has to be some other explanation.
Every scene is hanging on a thread. Mom!
I feel that tension and fear go well in hand together.
It's either Esther or Daniel who started the fire. Who do you think it was?
I don't know. We have these unresolved issues that must somehow get resolved, and we push them to the next scene, and then we push them to the next scene. At a certain point, you know, the fit is going to hit the shan.
What are you doing, you bitch?
You know, we see in so many films, we see, or literature, the evil child, the classic movie, The Exorcist, for example. And why did that have such an appeal?
The reality is, we as human beings have both a fascination with evil and a revulsion about it. Because this problem of evil starts in childhood.
Okay, this is our new student. Her name's Esther Coleman.
Oh, look. Little Bo Peep texts me. She wants her outfit back.
Freud once made a comment that the innocence of children is due largely to weakness of limb.
Please stop. If I find out that you're lying, I'll cut your hairless little prick off before you even figure out what it's for.
A child given an unlimited amount of power is going to become just as evil and corrupt as somebody that's an adult.
Children can have murderous impulses. Children can have sexual impulses.
You know, how many people have heard of kids who've had accidents? Oh, this one fell off the jungle gym.
Is it really an accident? You know, children, they don't know any better. And when you're dealing with somebody, even a little person that doesn't know any better, you never know what you're gonna get. It could be a wild card, dude, you know?
Freud talked about the idea that the personality is pretty well formed by the age of 5 in certain ways. And although that's an overstatement, in my opinion, this is what part of what he was referring to, that the things that happen are extremely influential in the development of personality.
And children grow up with that inside. And inside that, because they're afraid of the parent, they repress it, but there's a rage that many children who grow up in those circumstances have that rage inside, and sooner or later it will explode.
Oh, little doggy, is this your collar, little doggy?
And this, to me, is actually the seeds of evil.
I think what needs to be examined is Esther's relationship with those around her, specifically with you, Kate.
Well, Esther feels like she's a good little girl in a world that is just against her, and that she feels like she's the victim. I don't think Mommy likes me very much.
Hey, that's not true. Mommy loves you.
This is a person who has been hurt in such horrific ways.
You're a great mommy.
And in some sort of way, trying to find redemption through love.
Losing a parent, or both parents, as in the case of orphans, is a very traumatic experience for a child.
The family that brought her to America died in a house fire.
A fire?
Esther barely got out. She's been through a lot.
She's disguising herself as a child to basically punish people for what they've been doing, and she can't let go of her childhood that she never had.
If we think about the Günter Grass novel, The Tin Drum, the character there at the age of 3, I believe he hurls himself down a staircase and injures himself in such a way that he stops growing. And this can happen in children, psychologically. It's basically a refusal to enter adulthood.
Certain children who seem to go to a certain level of development, and if there's enough stress in the house, then children may get stuck at that level. To have a child turn the tables and attack their parents in a movie, in literature, is so shocking to people that it kind of is titillating, and it gets people very interested.
You're such a freak.
Hey, Danny.
You stop it. What's wrong with you?
Esther is hated by everyone. I think that she's going to become like an icon.
The job of a horror film frequently is to, in a not very subtle way, highlight the human condition in some way.
Maybe some of your feelings of inadequacy as a mother are manifesting themselves in your relationship with Esther.
I don't feel inadequate.
I think when Freud and Jung started examining the human psyche, so much is kept in dreams.
Your dreams can be a manifestation of your emotions. It's your body and mind's way of dealing with the stress and grief of what happened.
And I think the cinema opens this up for you, because in a darkened theater, you can kind of let yourself go.
I mean, everyone has these impure thoughts about killing someone they hate or whatever, and watching stuff unfold on screen is almost like therapy.
And that's what horror films do. That's what they do better than any other genre. What people really dig about them is it brings them to that point. I mean, there's no greater way to be than, terrified to a point where it's almost like startling and fun, but at the same time 100% safe.
I think in writing scripts for horror films, children always are a taboo that you want to tap into. But as we moved along into films, all of a sudden, what about an evil child? What about a child that was born bad?
What makes, the evil child movies interesting is the idea that children are doing the things that they're not supposed to do.
When you take something that is innocent and you skew it to the point where it's so far removed from what it started out as, dude, that's what's really scary about it.
The 1950s and early 60s, children were still kind of taboo.
Bad Seed's probably one of the first evil children movies.
You ask me and I say you don't even feel sorry about what happened to that poor little boy.
Why should I feel sorry? It was Claude Daigle got drowned, not me.
The premise of The Bad Seed was that Nancy Kelly comes to believe that the child that she bore was inherently evil.
Her evil all started with her hair. I think it was just a little tied too tight, squeezing her brain a little bit.
She was so awful that everyone wanted to kill her. And when she's finally done away with, Mervyn LeRoy was forced by the studio to show an alternate ending where they sit in a chair and they spank Patty McCormick because they were afraid. They made a statement in a film and then they had to backtrack.
Now it comes off a little silly, but it's still a classic and still will be remembered as probably the first evil child movie ever made.
Village of the Damned, it's your classic example of, hey, what's scarier than one kid? It's a whole village of them now, you know?
Village of the Damned, Children of the Damned have the premise that the aliens have taken over the embryo. And of course, the first thing that happens is the baby loses its humanity and it becomes rather reptilian.
The movie monsters of the 50s and the 60s, like the dudes in the rubber suits and the classic Universal creatures, they kind of fell by the wayside because people were looking for a more realistic kind of horror. So the 70s was the first decade where the horror started coming internally instead of externally.
Look at a movie like Rosemary's Baby, and that movie is about, in fact, when women are pregnant, the way they're treated in our society, they feel like their bodies are taken away from them.
At the end of Rosemary's Baby, it occurs to her that whether or not it's the spawn of the devil, it is her child.
Everyone wonders at the end of Rosemary's Baby, well, what next?
The Exorcist is shameless in its ploying the kind of concepts that we've spewed out at television for the last 50 years about what makes a perfect home.
You have Linda Blair playing this pouty-faced, little chubby-cheeked Cupid doll in a lot of ways. And then all of a sudden, an hour later, she's masturbating with a cross. And you have to be sitting there watching that going, holy shit.
That moment put an end to innocence in motion pictures.
You think Evil Kid, it's impossible for the first name to come into your mind not be Damien Thorne.
In The Omen, you have the child who seems so angelic, but yet you realize, as we all do with that it's a facade.
Here's the epitome of evil, the son of the devil, man. You don't get much more evil than that.
The mother, specifically, who's supposed to be the one who loves the child, wants to hurt Damien, but can't because he's a child. It's like, what do you do?
What are you going to do? Hit me?
Women especially, even if it's a killer baby, they're gonna want to mother it at some point.
Well, The Brood is one of my all-time favorite evil children movies. I mean, the whole concept of this mother is giving birth to these little creature children, and then when you see them in bunk beds living like humans, it's just completely unsettling.
If anyone's gonna do evil children, Cronenberg.
When you first see that creature child in the staircase just screaming out, chills straight up my spine.
What's scarier than your kid being the person you should be afraid of? When fear comes home and it's around you all the time, that's when things get scary.
What if Sister Abigail was right? If our own children were in danger, wouldn't you want to know?
Of course I would. It's kind of like one of those classic movies where you have the enemy inside the house.
I didn't want to do something that had been done before, and I wanted to find a new way into it.
I have a special surprise for you, Mommy.
It's not a story about a child who turns out to be Satan.
You think of like The Omen or something like that, or The Exorcist, and it's frequently supernatural.
Well, whenever you make these kind of horror movies, it's easy to get them started. It's easy to kind of go through the act two, but it's always hard to get a really fresh and original third act.
For me, when I read the script, it was sort of, oh, well, now this is a story I've never heard of before.
She's been passing herself off as a little girl for most of her life.
God, how could she fool us?
The sense of discomfort and awe to think that, can this really happen?
I dashed to the internet to find out what that disease is.
It's called hypopituitarism. It causes proportional dwarfism. She only looks like a child.
Movies like The Sixth Sense and The Others really have incredible twists that you do not see coming. And I think that this is as effective as those. When you find out the secret of Orphan, it's pretty cool.